the salespeople, I don't know. Especially these sneezy, sleazy, low-down salespeople. Look here. It just make you so mad that you buy something and then people lie and say it do this here. Of course, they don't do a damn thing like that. It piss you off. They don't know. Oh, don't try to carry it back. You gonna end up with something more worse than what you got. They need an ass whooping what they need, shit. I have to stop that shit right there. They need an ass whooping what they need, shit. I slap them upside the head. Ha, ha. Look here.
Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the music of Jennifer Batten. That was called Ass Whoopin'. It can be found on her 2007 Whatever album. When Jennifer was on the show 2 years ago, we spoke about her solo work and her experiences on the road with Michael Jackson and Jeff Beck. This summer, she's going to be hitting that road again, but this time she'll be presenting a multimedia extravaganza called The Self-Empowerment for the Modern Musician Experience. The tour will commence on July 12th in Seattle and conclude on September 6th in Illinois. At the end of the podcast, I'll be running down the full itinerary for you, but for now, just keep in mind that you can buy your tickets for the event at her official website, which is jenniferbatten.com. Joining me on the phone from Portland, Oregon is Jennifer Batten. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. It's been a while.
It has, a couple years, just shy of 2 years, actually.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of which, last time you were here, we did the career retrospective. So this time, we're just going to focus on your upcoming summer tour. I want you to start by explaining how it will be different from other clinics and seminars that you've done in the past.
Well, for the first thing, almost all the clinics I've done in the past are for guitar players. And this is going to be open to all musicians, including drummers. Yes, they are musicians. And it's going to cover a world of information, running the gamut from the latest apps that I find that people are unaware of because the internet is so huge and massive and confusing. Even students from across the world don't know about things that can really, really help them a lot that have been invented in just the last few years. As everybody knows, technology is just booming in every department.
Yeah.
And I've discovered a lot of stuff that can really help you along in music and life. So I'm going not only into music, but into different directions. Like one of the categories is fuel, which you normally think of that as gas you put in your car, but it's fuel to fuel your body as well as your mind. And it's not going to be a course on nutrition or anything. It's going to be more like making people aware of what's in processed foods and encourage people to go for natural foods. And, when you go on the market, all you need to do is just around the perimeter and leave all the aisles and the processed poison alone. Mm-hmm. And I've been stuffing all this information from all walks of life in my brain for years, and it's ready to explode.
So in a nutshell, what you've done in the past is, since you're known as a guitarist, you've focused on guitar, but now you're widening the scope to all musicians and just sort of some life advice. And so I know that it's going to be over 3 hours, and I know that it's going to touch on a lot of things. In fact, one of the topics you'll be covering is travel from the musician's point of view. So how are you going to be transporting yourself to all these gigs?
Well, this summer, for a change, it's going to be in America. So I have a motorhome. And, I'm going to start off basically telling my life story, but not to tell it. It's to go into subjects like what inspired this, lessons that I've learned, stories that are attached to these lessons so they're more memorable. And the reason that was triggered because we were talking about travel, and the whole RV idea came to me from a conversation with drummer Bobby Rock. And years ago, he had an RV bus that he would transport his band around America in. And I remember being completely overwhelmed with that idea of throwing the band in an RV and just going for it and sleeping at KOAs instead of hotels. And it was a seed that was planted. And probably less than 5 years later, I had my own.
Yeah.
So it's, everything in the seminar is connected, but I'm chunking it into bite-sized chunks in different categories. So I guarantee everybody that comes is going to walk away enlightened in some way or another.
You're taking your personal experiences, of which there are many, you're conveying those, which makes the event unique to you, and then you're extrapolating why we can all learn lessons from those stories and experiences. I want to be sure to mention you got a co-pilot in the RV, Jesse Solomon, who is a first-class guitarist. Does his resume also include much time behind the wheel of big rigs?
Not a lot, but we did do a tour a couple summers ago together down the West Coast. So at least I know that we got through that, and I didn't want to kill him, so he makes a great candidate.
Well, this is the thing. I've seen your itinerary, which we'll be getting into later, and if it's the two of you in the RV, I even friended him yesterday on Facebook and told him before you guys leave, he should watch the Albert Brooks movie Lost in America. I know it parallels you guys in some ways, and others it doesn't. It's just the funniest movie ever about two people taking a road trip in a Winnebago. So if you've missed it, you should see that one too.
Oh, fantastic!
Now, what is his role going to be in the presentation?
We're dividing it up a bit. I'm taking the lion's share, but for the last 12 years, he's run a music school, and he's just shutting it down now and ready to move on to other things. So he's learned a hell of a lot just from what he's gone through. So he's got a lot to add in departments like creativity and motivation from having built skills over the years dealing with so many different players. And he's also a great player, so there's a couple demos that we're going to do and trade sounds back and forth. For one thing, this summer is divided up into two things. Basically, one is this 3.5-hour self-empowerment seminar, and the other is doing a clinic that's representing Fishman's triple play wireless MIDI system, which allows guitar players to painlessly have access to the thousands of sounds that keyboards have had access to for years.
Oh, yeah.
And back in the day when I was with Jeff Beck, it was just an insane system with a 13-pin cable and a MIDI converter, a rack full of gear.
Yeah.
And now it's just a piece of plastic you can put in your pocket and a laptop. And that's replaced all of that stuff that was carted around the world at much expense.
Now, that sounds interesting. And I also want to mention that you have self-empowerment built right into the title. So clearly one of your goals is to instill self-confidence. Of course, simply imparting knowledge can go a long way in that regard, because the more knowledgeable you are, the more confident you tend to be. But above and beyond just factual education, are you covering other confidence-building techniques?
Yeah. There's, partly through my stories and things I've been through and things I've read. The first thing that comes to mind in that instance is there's a story of Bette Midler. She put out her first record and got completely slammed by the Rolling Stones. which everybody reads that. So, instead of saying, okay, that's one person's opinion, I'll just move on, she just stopped singing for a year. It just devastated her.
Yeah.
And so I have a few examples like that, and I also encourage people to get a few books under their belt, and one of them regarding that is called The Lexicon of Musical Invective by Nicholas Swanimsky. And what the book is, it's a cheap paperback, and it's full of bad reviews of famous classical composers in their day.
Yeah.
So it's something that puts it in perspective. So if you get a bad review, then you just read how somebody was saying that Beethoven won't ever go anywhere because he sucks.
Yeah, well, Beethoven had the great line because, somebody told him something like, I can't understand your music. And he sort of condescendingly said, it's not for you. Like it's for future generations. It's like, it's beyond you, stupid. Go away. That's not exactly how he said it, but, in other words, he knew that nobody was getting it. But, there's a dude who's on a whole different plane, so.
Yeah, it's all about perspective. And, everybody gets shot down in every walk of life throughout their life. And it's all perspective if it shuts you down completely, temporarily, or if you can just brush it off.
I was just listening to a podcast yesterday where someone was saying she tried to write a song and she wrote it for her boyfriend and did it for him. And his reaction was like so, I don't know the word for it, but she never tried to write another song for 10 years just because of the way he was like, he didn't criticize her. He just didn't seem very impressed. And she was crushed and devastated. And she waited 10 years to even try again. That's a shame.
Yeah. It's all about how you take that energy on. It's we've all been there, so you can empathize with the story.
Oh, yeah.
But there are ways to be strong and not let it do that to you.
And you mentioned, techniques for unlocking creativity, which tend to be neglected in the formal academic setting where it's all very programmed. And, throughout this conversation, I want to walk that line between, I don't want you to give too much away of the content, but if we can at least, like you've already sort of done, is grab the Bette Midler example, if we could continue to do that. But, unlocking creativity, are you speaking about, soloing, writing, just general creativity?
Yeah, in fact, there are people writing to me that want to come to the clinic that don't even play music. They're artists in one way or another. And with the exception of a few very specific music demos and music app demos that I want to do, it is for the creative mind because I see all creativity as the same. For myself, I obviously spent a lot of time in music, but then I got into film, I got into doing glass art and steampunk metal art, and it just fires up the right side of the brain to just think differently, and one thing fuels the other. So it's a really interesting thing to get into. In fact, I was just talking to Jesse. I had flown him in for the last couple of days, and I was talking about how I went to go see Joe Satriani one time, and being a total guitar nut, I wanted to see him, he's a great guitar player, but it was the very last song, and it was the drummer that inspired me to write a song based on what he did.
Oh, yeah.
So part of that is just being aware of creativity all around you all the time and soaking it up.
Yeah, being open to unexpected sources of creativity.
Absolutely.
Because when you mentioned in some of your promotional stuff about, the formal academic setting, as I said, because I was really turned off. For me, like a music major was kind of like a no-brainer for me. People assumed that's what I would do. And as soon as I got into that environment, I found it to be, they took all the most like sort of mundane and boring aspects of music. They just sucked all the fun out of it and just made me not want to be there. Now this isn't all, I'm sure Berklee College of Music isn't like that. It just happened to be where I was. And there's also like sort of a snobbishness among the teachers and stuff. It's like very turned off by it, I have to say.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about that. I mean, a lot of the teachers, end up there because they had this dream of doing something else with their music, but they ended up teaching instead. Yeah. I mean, there's, of course, a lot of teachers that just have a passion for it and love sharing, and that's cool. But if you've got somebody that's frustrated because they didn't do what they wanted to do, of course that's going to come out in their personality and be shot into the students as well. So it can be very toxic. And, depending on what, I think every musician I know has a story about something that a teacher told them that just messed them up for life. The first thing that comes to mind is a music teacher that told a bass player friend of mine that he couldn't sing. And up till that point, he had a real passion for singing and plenty of years ahead to improve, but he just stopped. So being aware of that, and I tell people it's having a teacher can be really, really helpful, but having the wrong teacher can be really, really detrimental. Mm-hmm. So don't just stop. Find another teacher that you resonate with, because teachers all have a different way of sharing their knowledge, and sometimes, what you need is not what your teacher is giving you.
Yeah, and an extreme example of that, which has been sort of been dividing people across the internet these last few months, is that Whiplash movie. I don't know if you saw that.
Right.
When a lot of people just hate it and what it represents. A lot of people are like, well, yeah, it's not realistic, but, it's good entertainment. Or, honestly, I got about 25 minutes in and just turned it off simply because I didn't find verbal abuse entertaining. People being yelled at and having things thrown at them. Apart from the musical content, which was questionable as well. So I was on the camp of, I don't really need to see this whole thing. And everybody says, well, you have to see it all the way to the end to really understand it. I go, well, like Donald Fagen said after his comment about it was, music isn't a martial art. And
exactly,
And from my point of view, if you see Louis Gossett Jr. and Richard Gere in Officer and a Gentleman, when he's ragging on those guys, it's entertaining, it's funny, it's, and it's not the whole freaking movie. It's just, don't you eyeball me, boy. And that's, where are you from? Oklahoma City. They had all those stuff that's like quotable. This was just like, throwing stuff and yelling and you suck. And I don't know. But at any rate, that's, and some people have commented that they've come across teachers like that, not just music teachers, and that, clearly this was, people were getting slapped in the face and, a teacher would be immediately fired for doing that. But I'm saying that's an extreme example. I think you're right. More often than not, the problem is a frustrated teacher or a teacher who's bored and yawning their way through ear training class. And, somebody makes a mistake and they don't comment on it because they don't notice because they're staring out the window thinking about going down to the river later, so.
Yeah. Well, one of the sections I'm getting into is what I've learned about how the brain learns. And it learns a lot better with positive reinforcement than negative. So that just right there says that the Whiplash, mode of teaching is, a lot of people are just going to quit because of it and give up their passion. But if it was completely reversed and given with love and support, it would be a way better result for the student.
And also it depends on your personality, because somebody walked up to me and said, hey, man, you can't sing. I don't have the type of personality where I would say, oh, you're right, and slink away. And I also don't have the type of personality where somebody's, I'll show you, just in general. My thing is like, well, let me hear you sing, And if that person can sing like Stevie Wonder or, is Killer, I might respect their opinion. If that person can't sing, I'll be like, hey, who are you to tell me I can't sing if you can't either? That's more where I'm coming from.
Yeah. When I was with Jeff Beck, he's real good friends, longtime friends with Chrissy Hine. And she told me that she was doing reviews for, rec reviews for New Musical Express in England for several years. And in hindsight, she said she had no business doing that. She didn't give anybody a good review because she was an angry punk. And just that story alone should tell people that just because a stranger says what you created is crap, it's, maybe they have a point, but most likely they don't. If there's something to learn from it, you can grow from it. But, you really got to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think publishers prefer bad reviews because they get more attention. I actually sent a CD I did to a local paper. They had a columnist. His column was called You Asked For It. So it kind of warns you that he's going to tend to be on it. But I thought, well, this is, I sent it. The guy wrote the scathing review, rated it like a D-, and just ripped me apart. But the thing about it was two things. Number one, it was so over the top that I couldn't possibly take it seriously. And number two, he only commented on the first 3 tracks. There were like 9 other ones he apparently didn't even listen to. So what ended up happening was like a bunch of the, if he would have said something that really cut me, like, oh my God, he has a point. But it was just ridiculous. He could have been writing about anything. It was more about entertaining himself with his insults, But I just laughed it off because I thought I guarantee you I'm a better writer, musician, anything than this guy. Like you said, he's one of those guys. Nobody cares about his music if he even writes any. So he's going to sit there in a dark room with his computer and take a piss on everybody else. You mentioned earlier about grocery stores and fuel, and you also spoke, touched on it a little bit, but you're specifically going to talk about neuroscience and the anatomy of the brain, and have some visual support for that. So that sounds pretty intriguing.
Oh, it is so fascinating because, I don't know how many years ago, but it has come into my consciousness that the neuroscience has come miles and miles and miles into the understanding of the brain pretty recently. And basically the brain is a hard drive that's been programmed up to this point, and you can reprogram it at will,
Yeah.
And just knowing that is incredible. And one other really, really powerful thing is seeing how the physical connection gets thicker as you do repetitions.
Ah.
And so I think every teacher in the world has shown people, play this line or play this melody or something, and automatically people try to play it too fast and they make mistakes. And the thing is, your brain is learning the mistakes.
Yeah.
So if you do it 60% right and 40% wrong, you get on stage and the brain is going to go, well, which one do you want tonight?
Since you're friends with Jeff Beck and know him real well, this has been attributed to him. I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, but I heard that he once said that if you make a mistake, just do it again, and then everybody will think you did it on purpose. Do you know if that's true?
That's a pretty common thing I've heard from a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario is to make a mistake and then just throw up your hands like, oh my God, I just screwed up.
Well, yeah. Well,
you got to cover your tracks somehow.
Oh, I have a quick story about that, though. I used to play guitar for the children's choir in church, and it was a situation where we'd show up, meet in the little room right before the service, learn the thing, go in and perform it. And there was this weird arrangement, and the only music was me. I had like a Gibson SG, but I had a clean sound on it. It was like a choir director and then maybe, 10 or 12 kids. And in between the verses, there was like 16 bars of chord changes just sitting there. And I said, do you really want me to play all this, or do you just want me to play like a natural 4 bars? And she thought about it and she goes, well, just play what's written there. I said, okay. So I go in there and they do the first verse, the kids. I start playing all these 16 changes, and about 4 bars in, she leads them into the next verse, and I am on the wrong chord. And I will admit, I broke the rule you just said. I did look pissed. And somebody told me afterwards, hey, if you make a mistake, just keep on playing. I go, dude, I'm not the one who made the mistake. The other 14 people did. That's why I was mad, because I specifically had made an effort to prevent this from happening. And anyways, that's what I was reminded of. Very low stakes, but let's never forget that, because Jeff Beck seems the type of the guy who would like say, "Ooh, I meant to play G and I played G sharp, but you know what? So what?" He just seems like that kind of guy. And there's a Wes Montgomery solo where he goes da 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 bump. It sounds like a wrong note. Then he goes da 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 da. Sounds like the right note. Then he goes da 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 bump and plays the sort of clam again, either to say I know I made a mistake or I meant to do that. I don't know which his point was, but it was sort of neat how he played what sounded like a wrong note, then a right note, then a wrong note again. So, hey, plus he's jazz.
You can just look at it like you're building tension, and then you get to release it for everybody.
True. You're also going to talk about and give demonstrations of useful technologies that are relatively inexpensive and in some cases even free. And I can tell you're pretty enthused about sharing that information. And speaking of free, monetization is one of the foremost subjects on everyone's mind in the music community these days, and you're going to be tackling that one head on. So ideally, those tips will enable your audience to, recoup the ticket price many times over.
Oh, absolutely. Boy, the stuff that I'm learning is just blowing my mind and very exciting. And it's like the internet, when it first started up, it's like, okay, we can get email, and as soon as you get past dial-up, maybe you can even see a YouTube video too. But at this point, people have figured it out. And there's no need to reinvent the wheel, because people have done testing and they know how it works. You can go to lulu.com and take a course for $25 a month, and several courses in internet marketing, and just learn how to do it and do it. And there's certain podcasts that I'm going to talk about that are so empowering that it's stories of regular people that got laid off and they thought, well, maybe I could do this, and they learned the path to do it, and now they don't need a day job. They can stay home, raise their families at home, and put in X amount of hours at work on the laptop, and they're good.
Also, like you mentioned about going to see Joe and his drummer being the one. I mean, Daryl Gable was on my show years ago. He's like episode 4. And I asked him if he was going to put out, another music CD. And he said, well, actually, he's just doing a ton of instructional DVDs because that's where those sell like crazy, whereas music kind of doesn't. So you also have to sort of be open to what you see in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of which, last time you were here, you mentioned that you're about to release some instructional DVDs of your own via TrueFire. Those have since come out and are now available at your website. One focuses on rhythm guitar, the other on lead. And you made some brief introductory videos explaining what you cover in them. So I'm going to pause a moment to play the audio from the lead guitar introductory video. Even though your upcoming tour is extensive geographically, of course, it's impossible for you to hit every town. And I know some of the listeners won't be able to make it to your seminar this summer. And I know a lot of people are going to be hearing this podcast well after the tour is over with. So I just want to point out that if you're listening and one of those scenarios applies to you, keep in mind that you can still benefit from Jennifer's experience in other ways, particularly when it comes to improving your guitar playing. So check this out.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Batten, and welcome to Rock Sauce for Lead Guitar. As a pro guitar player, you'll find that 95% of the time you'll be playing rhythm guitar, which is cool and it's fun, supporting a singer or whatever. But in that other 5%, when you're up in front with the lights on you and you get to soar in the front of the stage, you want to be prepared. You want to have all the colors available to you, all the little techniques and nuance you could possibly have to really make your stuff come alive and really make an impact and have fun with it. I've organized this course into 2 different sections. In the first section, I'm talking about concepts and techniques. And concepts like learning solos from the players that you like the best, being able to scientifically tear apart what they're doing and emulate what they're doing and then eventually make it your own. And I also got into techniques, everything from sweeping to tapping to hammer-on to pull-off to different styles of picking and all different colors and nuances to make your solos really interesting. In the second section, we're going to work through 16 different studies and put all this stuff in a musical situation where all the techniques are being used in time over harmony. We're going to work on some sweep picking techniques, using the tremolo and bending strings to get a more vocal kind of a sound. Using bluesy double stops for a real aggressive sound. We'll be using some legato lines with lots of hammers and pulls and just one pick per string to get a real liquidy kind of a sound. I'll show you how to build some melodic lines using natural harmonics. We'll cover some creative ways on how to use the tremolo bar and different kinds of tremolo bars you might run across. Skipping strings is a really great way to get a fresh sound by getting larger intervals in your playing. Incorporating chromatic scales into your leads. We'll work on getting an extra bluesy sound with your Mixolydian mode by adding the blues scale. I'll take you into my private reserve of tapping pentatonic scales. Using pedals with alternate picking. And of course, I'm going to show you some of my favorite whammy pedal tricks. For each of these lead guitar studies, I'm going to first perform them for you so you get them in your ears, and then I'm going to break them down real slow, go through every step so you can check out what the left hand's doing, what the right hand's doing, Everything's going to be tabbed and written out for you. You'll also have the rhythm tracks to work with, so you can play along with the rhythm tracks once you understand what's going on, and then you can make it your own. So that's it. Grab your guitar and let's get rocking.